This is Stacy Lane with Fox News. Today we will interview the world's most prominent anti-natalist, a gentleman who goes by the name TehMorbidAtheist. Mr. Atheist, please tell me what prompted you to become the way you are. Excuse me? Let me rephrase that. What made you not want any kids? Because the world is populated by people like you. I'm joking. Well, not really. But also because I don't want to add to the world's suffering by creating another sentient being that will probably consume other living beings, i.e. animals, contributing to their unnecessary suffering in addition to having to go through life's mundane chores, having to work, getting disappointed, getting dumped, getting sick, getting old, and eventually dying, among many other things. But life has so much joy in it. For who? For those who wish to make life enjoyable for themselves and for others. And what percentage of world's population does your Pollyanna example apply to? To anyone with the capacity to do good. The world isn't perfect. Are you saying that Pollyannish attitude is something we shouldn't strive for? If I were, I wouldn't be an anti-natalist. The reason why I used the word is to demonstrate the unreasonably illogical optimism that many humans subscribe to. There are two ways to solve a problem. One is to keep patching it up at a great cost, and one is to prevent it to begin with. At least we can agree that there's a problem, or rather problems, that need fixing. Our solution is to at least gradually grandfather ourselves out of existence because the cost of life is just too high. That is if we can't solve the animal problem. The animal problem? Yes, first one being the livestock problem, which is preventable if people stopped eating meat. Same applies to fish. And the second one being animals eating and ripping each other to shreds for the past billion years or so. That problem is harder to solve. But the first step is making enough people aware that there's an animal problem to begin with, which is a challenge itself. But if we all stop having kids, humanity will no longer exist. Who will take care of the last generation of old people? That is a red herring fallacy. You're avoiding the issue by diverting attention to the shock value of the conclusion. Some people say same things about livestock animals, as in, who will look after them if we leave them in slaughterhouses or let them out into the wild? Well, I guess that will be the last generation of livestock animals, and after they perish, their offspring will never exist to live and suffer. What you're suggesting will never come about, though. Is that why people get emotional, scared, and uneasy around atheists and anti-natalists? Because they think there's a chance we might be right, because we're insulting life itself, because anti-natalists can enjoy life without having kids, because happy and productive life is not exclusive to parents, because it is dangerous to let us have our fair shot of arguing. We can't even get that as a small unrepresentative minority because you know it could become a snowball effect. But you understand that your philosophy is very controversial. It is not my philosophy, it is a philosophy. To be fair, it's an extreme minority philosophy, and no, it's only controversial to those who don't understand it or don't want to understand it. Controversial things aren't necessarily wrong. Grandfathering ourselves out of existence requires overriding some of the basic and very powerful ego-based principles of self-preservation. It is not a fun philosophy, and people like fun things, where there's room for gods, wonder, mysticism, astrology, eternal life, spirituality, religion, alternate history, aliens, spirits, ghosts, angels, demons, etc. But isn't that selfish not to want to give life to someone else? Isn't it selfish to force your gift on someone who didn't ask for it? You're answering my question with a question. That's because your question is loaded. Please elaborate. Would you ever knock on someone's door in the middle of the night and then force them to eat one big rotten sandwich for the rest of their life? A rotten sandwich being life itself? Yes. I think your example is at best simplistic and at worst biased, in a sense that your example presents life in a default negative way, which by itself acts as a conclusion to your premise. You mean something that Fox News does on a daily basis, making hasty generalizations and all? Let's not go off subject, shall we? Yeah, let's argue the arguments instead of arguing ways of arguing. Why are you being so vocal and aggressive about anti-natalism? Because we have to overcompensate for being the only minority that basically has zero political representation in the world. We're apolitical and at the same time anti-political by the very endgame definition of the philosophy. We are confined to small, isolated strongholds around the internet and get undermined every step of the way by same inane, weak arguments, personal accusations, and numerous logical fallacies. But what makes you think you won't change your mind about having kids? Another loaded question. Your question assumes a default, uncompromising stance based on biology and societal expectations. I guess I would answer because I know myself and I know the state of the world we live in. But having kids is natural. So is having toothache. Except I have more chance to prevent myself from having kids than to prevent myself from having toothache. But everyone's doing it. That is an argument from popularity, which is another non sequitur. But you will never know what it's like to have kids. Well, I will also never know what it's like to have female breasts, and I will never know what it's like to walk on moon, and I will never know what it's like to ride a dinosaur, and I will never know what it's like to be the president, and I will never know what it's like to lay an egg, and I will never know what it's like to be a polar bear. But what if you make a great parent? Well, what if I don't? Is the child screwed then? What if you regret not having kids when you're old? I'd rather regret not having them than regret having them. But who will take care of you when you're old? I guess those who have nothing better to do with their time. But why argue about other people's reproductive choices? You may wish to not have kids, but you can't tell someone else to not have kids. That's right, I can't. I'm not the supreme overlord of Earth. Not yet, anyway. But what I can do is make arguments in the hopes that 1 out of every 1,000 people may listen and possibly understand our position. Let me ask you a question. How many people do you think is enough on Earth? 100 years ago, we had 1.5 billion people. Now we have 7 billion people. If we all have sex without contraceptives today, then in 9 months we will have even more people. Why aren't we doing that? Do you think that the unborn precious life is being wasted every time people of the opposite sex do anything except reproducing? I am not even going into the plethora of environment and economic issues that we're facing as a result of the overpopulation. One man's opinion, I guess. Yeah, sure, let's reduce it all to opinion. The one least taxing way to get out of an argument when one is cornered. I don't think we should air this interview. It goes contrary to everything I believe in. What were you hoping to learn from this interview anyway? We at Fox News love all of God's little creatures. Oh, fuck off.